What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sixers Saturday. If you don't know by now, this is our time here on the Atlantic Files YouTube channel to talk just Sixers every Saturday. We do it every Saturday, 10 a.m. So if you are a Sixers fan, Sixers hater, or anything in between, come join us on 10 a.m. on Saturdays. And before we get into things, if you are new here or even if you're returning, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the bell below for notifications whenever we go live. We go live twice a week, once with this, once with our Atlantic Files podcast episodes, and you'll find videos throughout the day throughout the week, as well. So, without further ado, I am your host, Alex Fishbein. I'll be the one pretty much leading all these episodes for Sixer Saturdays as well. You can find me on Twitter at __fish, just like it's spelled right there. So you can check me out on there as well. So let's get into things. Since the last time we spoke a couple weeks ago, at the time, the Sixers were winless. Now, Sixers are 4-6. They did have a nice little 3-game win streak over the Raptors, the Bulls, and the Wizards. We saw Tyrese Maxey really come alive. We saw James Harden kind of going back and forth, but then end up getting hurt in one of those games as well. Actually, I think it was the one game that they lost to Washington after that, so my mistake on that one. But Joel Embiid only played one of these games. There was all this talk about, maybe they need to just trade Joel Embiid. But, then with him out, the defense looked pretty terrible. And those talks went directly out the window. So overall, in this 3-game win streak, I would definitely have to say that the offense itself looked good. I mean, 112 against Toronto, 114 against Chicago, 118 against Washington. Those are all really good point totals. Against Toronto, that's when Maxey had his 44-point game, led the team in rebounds as well, being the shortest guy in the starting 5. He had 8 rebounds in that game. The Chicago game, then Embiid came back for that one game. He led the team in points and rebounds, 25 and 7. Harden led the team in assists with 11. And then Washington, the first game against Washington, Maxey led the team again in scoring, and then Harden led the team in rebounds and assists. Harden had 17 assists in that game, and it was nice to see, especially in this Wizards game, more sharing of the ball. I mean, the team as a whole had 26 assists. And, 17 of those being James Harden is obviously he takes the lion's share of, the distributing and the playmaking so far that we've seen this season. But the biggest thing that we see with this Sixers team in terms of their issues is always when it becomes heavy ISO, it's just Harden dribbling the ball out, Embiid dribbling the ball out, then they give it to Maxey, he dribbles the ball out, nobody moves, there's no real, sets or plays or anything. That's just all it is. We just watch them dribble, take a shot at the end of the shot clock. If it goes in, yay. If it doesn't, well, there it goes again. So, which we will get into about Doc Rivers and his sets and his offensive scheme and so on and so forth. It's still very alarming with how this team sees things going correctly in one way or another, and then immediately after a couple minutes says, you know what, that was going well, but let's now revert to what we were doing before instead of doing the things we're doing well and winning us a game. It happens pretty much all the time. But in this 3-game win streak, at least they refrained from doing that long enough to hold on to win the game. Especially, when it comes to the Raptors, they the Raptors pretty much blew them out the first of their back-to-back away games at Toronto. Usually it's like a home and home, kind of like what they did with Washington, at Washington, then home against Washington. But with Toronto back-to-back in Toronto, which probably, I mean, that can't be easy, especially because Toronto's really fired up against the Sixers now after the past playoff series, and of course the series with Kawhi and the shot in Game 7. The Raptors and the Sixers have become quite a rivalry, especially with Joel Embiid there. So, I mean, yeah, that first game against Toronto lost 119 to 109. Maxey leading the team again in that one. Really, when it comes down to that game, there really wasn't much to say. I mean, they didn't take care of the ball as much as they normally do. Maxey turned the ball over 4 times himself. Embiid had 31 points, but was only able to grab 5 rebounds, which, I mean, for a guy who's 7 foot and usually in the paint, that is pretty inexcusable. So then it gets, I mean, during the win over the Raptors, though, it looked like a completely different team. Maxey was getting out on the break and getting his easy shots, but then on top of that, Maxey hit 9 threes. He was 9 of 12 from 3, and he was a plus 29 in terms of plus minus, which was just insane. And of course, with Embiid not there, that started the whole, maybe we can trade Embiid and get pieces back and be an even better team. But then, I mean, you still look at the bench, and that is still one of the biggest issues, and it's going to continue to be a bigger issue now that Harden's out for a month. Embiid is out with this non-COVID illness, and we don't know what exactly is going on with him. But looking at the bench, I mean, Niang had 5. Harrell in this game had 9. Matisse did have 6 points. He hit 2 threes in that. Shake had 2. Springer had 4. Those were really towards the end of the game. They only got about 9 minutes, 2 minutes each. Paul Reed only playing 2 minutes in this one. And that is another common theme with the Doc Rivers-led Sixers that, there's all this hype around B-Ball Paul. There's all this hype around Matisse being defensive players and energy guys, and they're just not getting into games. So let's get to the most recent thing. After that 3-game win streak, they went back to a 2-game losing streak against Washington. They lost to Washington in the second half of their home and home. And then just last night, they lost to the New York Knicks by 2 in a game where they had a pretty big lead heading into the fourth quarter after outscoring the Knicks 30-16 in the third. Now, I will say this game showed Maxey probably given more time as a number 1 option, could get used to it. But, I mean, he took 29 shots to score 31 points. Not the most efficient night from Maxey. He shot 10 of 29 from the field, 4 of 13 from 3, but he did hit all 7 of his free throws. To be honest, I was excited for him that he even got up to 7 free throws. A lot of the time, he's not getting the respect of the refs. He's not getting the type of calls that Harden, Embiid, or any star gets, because obviously, as the younger player coming up, you always have to establish yourself, and then that once you keep building upon that, that's when you get the benefit of the doubt from the refs, and you get the little ticky-tack calls, and so on and so forth. And I think it's only a matter of time before Maxey ends up getting that type of respect, because, I mean, he has shown that he can hang with the best of them in this league so far. I mean, looking at, so I had since the beginning of that 3-game win streak, which that's a 5-game stretch now. Maxey right here has put up 29.8 points, 4.2 rebounds, 4.2 assists per game. He's been shooting over 50% from the field and over 47% from 3. I mean, those are just ridiculous numbers. While he might not, be contributing in the all-around aspect of things, he's not the playmaker that James Harden is. I mean, it's hard to be, as James Harden is probably one of the best we've ever seen. But almost 30 points a game. If you told anybody you would get Tyrese Maxey near the end of the first round, and at one point he'd be putting up close to 34 and 4 on 50%, 47% shooting, anybody on any team, any fan, coach, GM would be ecstatic. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's video game numbers, to be honest. It really is. So, all that to say, during this losing streak, it's not on Maxey. Maxey's defense probably could be a little bit better, but he's been leading the offense in a way that, I mean, he has to. Now, like I said, this game against the Knicks, not super efficient. 10 of 29 isn't great. Melton, I mean, couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. He was 4 of 18 from the field, 3 of 11 from 3. Also split his free throws. But he did contribute in a lot of other areas other than just his scoring. He did have 5 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. All very important throughout the game. He was one of only 3 of the starters that were actually either 0 or positive in their plus minus, the other 2 being Maxey and PJ Tucker. Other than that, there was only 2 other players that were positive, and that was Niang and Shake Milton. I did like the most of the minutes I saw out of Shake Milton. He was getting out in transition. He was attacking the rim, sometimes a little recklessly, but it is what it is. But I say all that to say, finally with Daniel House Jr. also out, Joel Embiid out, James Harden out, Paul Reed and Matisse Thybulle finally play some minutes. I mean, Thybulle only played 13 minutes. I mean, he had a shaky game. It wasn't great from him. Didn't hit a whole lot of his shots. He hit a couple, had a steal, had a block, a few rebounds, nothing too crazy. Paul Reed, on the other hand, delivered all of the defensive, I don't want to say prowess, but like defensive energy, and then just on-court energy overall. He finished with 4 rebounds, 6 steals, and 2 blocks. And towards the end of the game against the Knicks, Doc Rivers believed that it was going to be a positive thing to play both Montrezl Harrell and Paul Reed. Now, if I were to tell you that in any game this season, you were going to go up against a team, your favorite team was going to go up against a lineup that had Harrell and Paul Reed in it, you would probably laugh your way to a win every time. And that's not to say either one of those guys are particularly terrible, but those are 2 people that do not belong together on the court at the same time. Harrell's defense has been pretty non-existent this whole season. Paul Reed's defense has been pretty good. On offense, they're both pretty non-existent. Harrell is a pick and roll, rim running big that can't run very fast and can't jump very high. So when it comes to rim running and catching lobs like he used to, that's just not really going to happen. So then you put in Paul Reed, who essentially is the same exact thing on offense. Are you just going to make them both run to the rim and throw a lob up and see who decides to jump and catch it and put it down? Or like what's the game plan here? The spacing on the floor is terrible. Nobody's going to respect either of them. So I just fail to see the thought process in this. And so one thing I want to show here, I'm going to bring up some of the defensive plays from Paul Reed because, I mean, they were great. And first, I want to bring up the first game of the losing streak. So this was against the Wizards. It was at home. And Paul Reed only got 4 to 5 minutes in this game. And the reason I bring that up specifically is because in the post-game press conference, Doc Rivers specifically said that they didn't have the energy or the defense in the paint to stop the Wizards. And they asked, what about the 5 minutes that Paul Reed said? He's like, oh, he brought some energy and blocked some shots. So you literally just contradicted yourself in real time and just showed you just don't like the guy. Like that has to be the only option left. So let me bring this up here. So this is this is the Knicks game. So let me bring up the correct thing here to show you what we need. So I just shared the Knicks game again. This is a struggle. Here we go. So this is when Paul Reed first got into the game.
And your game as you headed to the locker
Harden dribbling, puts it up. Great offensive rebound, leading to a three. I mean, it's textbook. It's legitimately textbook of what Paul Reed brings to the floor. Paul Reed is bringing you that energy, the fight on the offensive boards, the fight on defense to actually block some shots, cause some things to happen. And then on top of that, so then to go along with that, right after that play, this started a 6-0 run for the Sixers and actually got them pretty, close and back into the game. Right after that, let me bring up the correct thing here. That's the Knicks one again. So maybe I have two Knicks things? No, I don't. Okay. So the next play after that, Paul Reed goes up, contests a shot beautifully, and then gets an easy dunk right here.
Fine, James Harden. Beal way too strong. Harris wants to push.
Contests that shot, gets out on the break, runs all the way down the floor. Great pass from Matisse. I mean, again, this is what Paul Reed is giving you. And Doc Rivers looked at that. They called the timeout. Paul Reed played, I think, maybe one more minute and was right back on the bench, and the team goes on to lose. I mean, now what I want to bring up, too, is first off, this is what we're talking about. Rivers' rotations, his adjustments, his refusal to play people. So let me bring up the actual steals that he had in this game against the Knicks. Now I'm going to mute this one because it's a few clips here. So he had 6 steals in this game. And throughout the parts that he was actually on the court, he was able to disrupt the Knicks. Like right here, that perfect little just jab at the ball when Fournier's driving into the paint. And that's exactly what the Sixers have needed, is they need the paint protection, even if it's not rim protection. They need the protection in the paint because these games without Embiid, the points in the paint for the opposing team were so bad. I mean, he even... Like, the Sixers even gave up 60-some points to the Wizards in the paint. 60, I think it was 68 points in the paint, is outrageously terrible. You're giving them layups all game long. And in the post-game press conference, Rivers again says, Reed blocked some shots, so you had good energy. And then the reason we lost is, we didn't have anyone to block some shots in the paint, and the energy wasn't there. Well, you just said there was a guy who did that well, and you played him for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. Please explain the logic. There is no logic in there. On top of that, the logic to play both Harrell and Paul Reed at the same time in a game that you need a little more offense because your offense is sputtering. No logic in that. Again, not running pretty much any plays, even after timeouts. There's like a few plays here and there that actually do anything other than get an ISO look. So at this point, my thing is, I don't see Doc Rivers lasting the whole season. I hope he proves me wrong. You'll probably see in the bio below, we talked about Coach of the Year, and I was like, if Doc Rivers does his job, he could be Coach of the Year with this team because this team is that talented, and they should be able to win a lot of games. Now, with Harden out for a month, Embiid, still suffering from this non-COVID illness, whatever it is, he's going to have to coach his ass off. And if he's able to and gets this team into a position to really contend for a top seed, and then Harden comes back and Embiid starts playing well again, he could be Coach of the Year. But all signs right now are pointing to getting fired and somebody replacing him for the Sixers. So you guys let me know. Comment below, what do you think they should do? Should they fire Doc? Should they not fire Doc? And if they do, who do you think would be a better coach in his place? But that is it for me this week. I appreciate all of you guys coming in, watching, hanging out, listening to me complain and talk Sixers. But as I said, every week, 10 a.m. on Saturdays, Sixers Saturdays, it's where it's at, right here on the Atlantic Files YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications for every time we go live and whenever we drop videos. We're dropping clips of our long-form episodes all the time, so make sure you check those out as well. Thank you. Thank you for watching Sixers Saturdays with your boy Fish. I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you guys next week. Peace.